Well, hello there. It's PL Stewart again, back live on a very special interview having to do with SFF Spotlight 2024. We'll talk about that later. However, I have been joined by an esteemed guest today, author, editor, reviewer for FanFi Addict. There's a lot of things in this space, a lot of wonderful things, which we'll hopefully get to hear more about. The awesome Ed Crocker. Ed, thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure. Really, really good to be here. And you called me esteemed, which is never been called before. So that's a great way to start. So
No, you are
you
definitely
started
esteemed.
well.
You're definitely esteemed. So, this interview, amongst others, was set up by the wonderful Holly Tinsley, author, blogger, a friend of mine and yours.
You
She
like Holly?
is, yeah, she's shout out to Holly. She's watching, or will watch later.
Hi, Holly.
So, this is all part of the SFF Spotlight 2024 event.
Yes.
Now, I've had some other authors from it on before as well, but can you tell a bit from your perspective what this event is all about?
Yeah, sure. So I keep forgetting of it. I keep getting it sci-fi and fantasy spot. It's sci-fi and fantasy spotlight, not the other way around. So that's not a good start. No, yeah, sci-fi and fantasy spotlight. 99% sure. So it's an event being held, a one-day event being held in Shrewsbury, in England, obviously, on the 29th of September on a Sunday. In fact, that's a week tomorrow, crazily. And I guess it's at the Nerdy Cafe, which I'm told is like an awesome place. I've seen the pictures; it looks pretty awesome. And I guess the basic gist is that it's a group of authors and other members of the indie community who've all kind of come together just to kind of put on panels and workshops. There's a mixture of panels and workshops, and readings. There's some readings, and there'll be merch there as well. And I guess there's two ideas, I suppose. One is just to put on a really cool event that promotes some of the incredible kind of indie authors out there. Obviously in the UK, so I'll be there physically, but we'll be talking about all kinds of indie authors. But it's also a really good chance for, I think, people in the local area, but also anyone who's coming down, who's either doesn't know much about indie fantasy or indie sci-fi or even the genre at all, but really wants to get started reading it, or wants to get started writing an SFF book and does not know where to start. So it's good if you're like really into everything and you just want to come and hear some amazing authors. There's some fantastic authors there. But it's also good if you just like, I don't know what this is about, but I want to get into it. I want to read more indie. I want to try and write my novel and stuff. So it's good for everyone, I guess. And it's just nice to have an event that's kind of more indie catered, not just trad. Although there are, well, I'm technically a trad author, but it's mostly indie authors. So it's nice to have that focus, and it's just going to be useful for anyone who just wants to find out more, I guess.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're not going to get your SFF Spotlight 24 place revoked because you're a trad author and not
Yeah.
and not indie.
Well,
So,
it's funny. It's funny actually because I didn't get invited because I was an author. Holly invited me because my book hadn't been announced yet when Holly invited me. So I got invited because of my book reviews I do for a website called Fantasy Addict, I guess, and also because I'm a book editor, so I work with a lot of cool indie authors. Um, and then I announced my book like a couple of months later. And so I guess Holly was like, "Oh, okay. Guess he's trying to do everything now." um, but I think that's one of the reasons I got quite excited about it because I wasn't originally coming down just like as an author. It was like all the other stuff that I do, which I love as well. So I get to just talk about indie books and do stuff like that. Um, so that's yeah. So I guess that's how it started, and then I just, as a bonus, I've also got a book coming out. So
yes, well, congratulations. We will get to talk about that. We will get to talk about Lightfall. Congratulations with book deal. That's a huge accomplishment. So, kudos to you.
thank you. Yeah, we'll see if I mess it up. Time will tell.
Well, I think you got the big part over with. You've got an agent, you got a book deal, so that's a lot of battle right there. So
Yeah. Although I am faking it a bit at this event. I shouldn't really talk too much about my book at this event because it's coming out in America. It's coming out in North America. US and Canada, but it's not coming out in the UK, or at least in bookstores. You can
Oh,
get it on Amazon.
oh,
So
that's
I'm faking it a bit. So I should probably talk more about the event than my book. But anyway,
well,
yeah.
well, we want to cover both. So I just want to clarify with SFF Spotlight 24. So you're saying people are going to get a chance to interact with authors. Are there going to be panels, like meet and greets? Like what's the format? Like, what's happening at this event?
Yeah, so if Holly's watching, she's probably going to start laughing as I describe this really badly because I'm terrible at just describing stuff. So I'm 99% sure. So you've got an upstairs and you got a downstairs. This is like me describing basic buildings. Upstairs, you're going to have so it takes place from 11 till 7, I believe. I might have got those times wrong. Don't quote me on that. And on the upstairs bit, you're going to have about 5 or 6 panels, and those panels are going to be on things like discovering your next best read. So like what amazing indie books are there out there that we're going to recommend. It's going to be things like how to start your novel. So it's going to be awesome obviously people want to start their novel. And I've completely forgotten all the other ones. World building, I think it's one. World building. And then downstairs we're going to have some workshops. I know there's a workshop by the amazing Stephen Arian on, I think, world building. I might have made that up. And I know there's a workshop. I've completely forgotten the other workshops. Sorry, Holly. There might be a sword fighting one actually. Which sounds amazing. And there's also, so the star of the event, or whatever you call it, like the key author, is Emily Inkpen, who does the amazing Dex Legacy audio series, amongst other things. So she'll be doing all that, and there's be readings. We just got DB Rook, the awesome indie author, who's just signed on as well, and we're going to have, as well as workshops and panels, there'll be like readings and merch stores and all the cool stuff you get at these one day events. So yeah, so like a mix of everything, basically. She described that quite well. I'm quite proud
Yeah,
of myself.
you did a fantastic job. I'm sure Holly will be proud. So you certainly didn't disgrace yourself with that description. So.
The last interview I did last week, also about this, I just didn't say anything about it. I was so rubbish. So I've actually prepped a bit. Incredibly.
No, that's awesome. No, you did a great job. You did a great job. So, what is your role going to be? Are you going to be in specific panels? What are you going to be doing at this event?
Yes, so I am thankfully for everyone involved, I'm not doing a workshop or a live reading. I'm going to be on 2 panels. I am on one panel called Discovering Your Next Great Read, I think. And that is essentially about well, 2 things. About partly like how do you find out the awesome books to read, especially indie books? Like where do you go to find them out? You know, do you go online? Do you know who do you watch YouTube? What do you do? And also just recommending some awesome ones. You know, like I spend half my life online just hyping up hyping up authors, especially indie authors, and so I'm going to be doing a lot of hyping. It'll be a bit of a hype panel for me. And the second panel I'm on is he says, trying to remember. Oh yeah, so starting your writing your first book or something like that. Starting your first book. So that'll be just the basics, like how do you start a draft, like how do you plan your book, plotting, pantsing, all that kind of stuff. And things like moving on, how do you edit it, other stuff that I've forgotten. Like Holly sent me like a load of awesome questions the moderator will be asking, and I've forgotten them all because I'm chaos. But yeah, basically like from start to finish, the path of the journey of writing your book. And I guess that'll be interesting for me because my day job is I edit books. I work with indie authors and I edit their books, but also I've got my first book coming out, and I'm just sent my second book off to my editor as part of a trilogy. So I'm kind of coming at it from 2 different perspectives. So that could be quite interesting. And yeah, those are the 2 panels I'm on, I guess.
Oh, fantastic! I wish I could be there to participate and watch, observe. But it sounds like it's gonna be awesome. I'm sure your panels are gonna be well attended and fabulous. So yeah, I wish you best of luck with the entire event.
You can. It's good news because you can. I believe, unless that's something I dreamt, that you'll be able to watch the panels at least back on the channel. They have a Fantasy and Sci-Fi Spotlight channel, which this might be. I don't. Is this going to be on? I don't know. But anyway, I believe the plan is to put those panels on, so you will be able to just book a day off and just sit down and watch all the panels. Hopefully, if that's not true, then just you can edit this bit out.
Well, that would be awesome. That sounds fantastic. So for those watching that are interested, sounds like you can attend virtually. So yeah, that's amazing news. It sounds like a great event, and like I said, wishing you and all the authors and everyone involved nothing but success with that. It sounds fantastic.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
So clearly, you do a lot. You do a lot, in the whole
Too much.
writing space. Yeah, but fulfilling, rewarding, right? I'm guessing. So why don't we talk about first? Now, I of course am with the wonderful Before I Go blog. Shout out to the incredible Beth Tabler and our crew. I'm an assistant editor there,
I
and
love that.
yeah, and yeah, Beth is absolutely amazing, and we have such an amazing group of bloggers there. Um,
It's great.
Fi is obviously another fantastic blog. People have to realize there's if there's any competition between blogs at all, it's very friendly. It's very encouraging, supportive. We have a lot of bloggers that go back and forth between some of the different bigger blogs, and FanFi is certainly one of the bigger and well-known blogs. So can you tell us about how you got involved with FanFi and what's it like there? What's going on with that particular outfit?
Yeah, sure. So it was funny. So I started like writing reviews on my own blog, which I don't do anything on now. I should probably start blogging again on my website. Now I'm going to be author, whatever. We'll deal with that. So I started doing book reviews about 3 years ago, maybe. Or I think I'm very bad with time. And obviously I would put it on Twitter. So some of the I only joined Twitter late 2021, I think, when I got an agent, because I was like, I'd better join Twitter. And I mean, I wish I joined it years ago, because it's become this gateway to just meeting so many people. And I'm on it all the time now. And yeah, so I joined it, and then I quickly sort of found all these amazing people and stuff. So I would share my reviews from my blog on there, and they get a few shares and everything. But I was like, obviously, it's not many people seeing this. That's fine. I'm just having a bit of fun, just trying to hype books. And then the awesome boss of Fanfare Addict, Lord TBR, the man, the Lord himself. Yeah, we pray to him regularly. um, he just shot me a message, and he was like, I've seen your reviews, I like your stuff. Do you want to join us? I obviously knew about them. And that was like, I'm gonna be completely honest. That was awesome for me, because I don't think there's anything wrong with saying if you're writing reviews, you want a few people to see it, because what's the point otherwise? So that was a really cool moment for me. I was at that point, I had my book deal, but I couldn't tell anyone about it. I was unannounced for 2 years, which anyone in publishing knows is, even by publishing standards, quite a long time to keep a secret. So one of the things that kept me sane was I just kind of put that aside and was like, I'm not an author. I just want to focus on just having fun writing book reviews, just making friends and stuff. So I just plowed a lot of effort into that, and I just wrote reviews for that. And yeah, and I still do it now. It's an amazing community. There's like 40 of us or something crazy. We send stupid messages to each other. There's lots of talk. I probably shouldn't say what we talk about. Actually, I don't know. That's breaking some kind of rule. There's a lot of weird memes. It's awesome. And yeah, and I still write reviews. I think we're in about 80 now, which is still nowhere near as much as some of them. But yeah, it's just great. I just love it. I just love writing reviews. It's really satisfying. I like introducing people to cool books. I like the challenge of writing a review, which is completely different from writing a novel. You know, this sounds a bit poncy, but like I see myself as a reviewer and a writer. If that makes sense. Like I just love it. I have no plans to stop. It's just a nice part of my life, and there's zero pressure because unlike my book, I'm not contractually obliged to write reviews, so I could stop anytime I wanted. But I don't want to because I like it. So yeah, That's honestly a really nice part of my life.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I totally agree. I feel the same way about doing both. And like you, I love shouting out books that I love, especially
Mm.
indie books, books that are lesser known. And FanFi has some, including yourself, has some fantastic reviewers. It's and like you said, it's lovely because there is no pressure in terms of you read what you want. Most of the blogs are very much like that. The typically, most of the what people don't realize with we bloggers, especially in these blogs that you'll typically see that are involved in things like SPFBO, the self-published fantasy blog off, etc., is that the reviewers, the bosses largely give us a lot of autonomy to review what we'd like and to find our favorite books and shout out about them. And that's probably one of the best parts about being a blogger and reviewer. So
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's like I basically just have complete freedom. If I just want to review a book, like I'll just write a review and I'll review a book. If I want to interview an author for the website, I'll just contact the author and say, "Hey, do you want to have an interview?" And it's great because I mean, traditional publishing, like in my author side of my life, you don't get much freedom. So this is just awesome. I can just be like, "This is an amazing book. I want to just hype it up. I want to write a review on it," and then boom, I just do it. It's great fun. And one of the nicest things, I don't want to sound too wholesome. One of the nicest things is that when you put a review up, obviously you're writing reviews for readers, really, not authors. Although it is nice when the authors are sometimes like, we like that review. But what I love is when a reader or like a friend online or something, you put a review up and they put a message or something, they say, "Oh, this looks amazing. I hadn't heard about this, but I'm definitely going to buy this." And as someone who kind of, when I read a book that's not got many readers yet, or is like underrated or whatever, or maybe hasn't come out yet, all you want to do is tell people about it, and all you want to do is get them to read it. It's like, I mean, you know the feeling. It's like an urge that we all have as like reviewers. We just want to shout it out from the rooftops. And then when you get that it's like a dopamine hit. When you get that person saying, "I'm gonna read it," it's just awesome. It's a great feeling. So yeah.
yeah, no, I
Sound like
agree.
an addict now, don't I?
No, 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 no. I totally concur. I can sell other people's books a hell of a lot better. I can sell my own. I can tell you that right now.
That is so
You
true.
you asked me to shout out about the virtues of my favorite books. I can go on for days about but my book. Part of it too is as much as I do talk about my own work, you feel disingenuous about saying how great your book is, right? You don't feel, but
Yeah.
someone else's book, of course, I can shout to the heavens about how much I love it. So that's it. It is one of my favorite parts of being a blogger, and I'm happy to hear that that's one of yours as well. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, it's funny you say that as well because like I'm terrible, as we may find out, I'm terrible at describing my own book. And I don't really well, it's not I don't enjoy it. I find it hard to praise my own book. And that's not because I'm being purposely, putting myself down. It's just I'm British. That's kind of what we do. We don't like praising ourselves. And it is genuinely quite awkward for me. And my early reviewers are just like actually selling my book, and I'm like, "You're actually talking about my book well," but I'm just awful at it, and I doubt I'll ever get good at it. So yeah, I totally see where you're coming from.
well, we're going to give you an opportunity though to put that to the test because you will be talking about your book at some point soon in this interview. So get ready for that.
Yeah,
But it's wonderful what you do in the reviewing space, and FanFi again is a very very popular, reputable, and well known blog that a lot of friends there and love what you guys do. You guys do great work there. So kudos for that. So your
before we go, blog is also awesome. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, and
just
again, yeah, I work with a bunch of amazing people there, and yeah, and Beth, of course, is a fantastic leader, and she's so well respected in the industry. So yeah, it is awesome to be there. So as well, though, and you mentioned it, and before I get into the editing side, so when I read your bio on your website, I found out that you're by trade, you studied law at Oxford of all places, and then turned to being a journalist and teaching secondary school English. So can you talk a bit about you went to a very prestigious university, you took a very serious, and well respected subject. And then, but you didn't end up going on, it seems, to pursue law, and you got
Yeah.
into journalism and teaching. Can you tell us a bit about that phase of?
This is going to be funny because you're the first person who's asked me about it in terms of an interview. Not that I've done many interviews so far. And it's, well, I'm not going to say it's an interesting story in case it turns out to be really boring, but I've had a very stupid life in terms of my 20s, very daft decisions. So yeah, so I went to Oxford to study law. And when you say you went to Oxford, people always go, "Oh, you must be really posh." And I'm always quick to say, as anyone who goes to a comprehensive or state school in UK is always very quick to say, "No, I went to well, in America, I guess you call them public schools, but over here we call them state school comprehensive, just your normal school." And that's how I got into Oxford. Otherwise, everyone assumes you're like some kind of like Prince Harry or something if you say you went to Oxford. Um, so yeah, no, I just got in by being a nerd, uh, and I studied law because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. It was kind of a random pick, um, and I enjoyed it. It was very interesting. I decided pretty early on that I didn't want to be a lawyer. I like the career did not interest me. The theory interested me, but I did not want to be a lawyer at all. So I was like, that's a bit pointless. Sorry, parents, for wasting your money. And although it's okay because back then I'm so old now that it wasn't the crazy fees. It wasn't even the slightly crazy fees. It was like 1 grand a year, so I didn't waste too much of their money. Anyway, they won't be watching. It's fine. So then I basically just had a couple. Then I did a journalism masters because I was like, okay, so I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a journalist. I've always liked the idea of being a journalist. Maybe that's why I like doing reviews and interviews so much because it's like a way of hitting that. And I did a journalism masters at Salford University, Salford's place in Manchester. And I failed epically to get a job in journalism because it was the 2008 big crash and there were no jobs going. Also, maybe I was rubbish, who knows? Um, and so I was like, okay, so what do I do now? So I needed money, so I got a job at a call center. That was pretty rubbish, as anyone who's worked in a call center knows. And do you call them call centers over there? Yeah, is that what you call them? Okay, cool.
I think around the
And
world, they're called call centers pretty well.
yeah, it's universal, isn't it? And I then thought, right, let's do something with my life. At this point, I'm about 24, 25. And I did something called Teach First in the UK, which is where instead of taking a couple of years to do like a teacher training program before you become a teacher, they take graduates. They take graduates with fairly good degrees, which sounds a bit arrogant, but whatever. And they put them in like a summer camp for like 2 months, like supercharged teacher training, which sounds very weird when you say it like that. And then they put these graduates into like state schools that maybe have kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So the idea is that you get these graduates to maybe like be like a role model for the kids or whatever. It's a very successful program over here. It sounds quite weird when you describe it. A lot of people leave though after the 2 years that you're meant to do it. I was one of those people. um, I, I wasn't a terrible teacher. I wasn't an amazing teacher. I like some parts of it. The kid. Yeah, I do miss some parts of it. But teaching in the UK is kind of very stressful. It's very, in my opinion. Well, I think most teachers' opinions. I don't like stress. I just like sitting around all day playing video games. And so I was really ill for the Easter holidays of my first year. Really ill. That's a separate story, and not an appropriate story for this interview. And when I got better, I was like, I need to treat myself. So I went on like a mini holiday to York, which is now my favorite place in the world. And not New York, York in the UK. And I just walked around this amazing place, and I was like, just realized I wanted to be a novelist. I just remembered my childhood dream of writing books, and I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a novelist. So I went back to school, and then I saw out the second year, and then I just left. I just quit teaching. I didn't have any money lined up. I thought everyone would say I was crazy, but my family and friends were actually quite nice about me. They said that I was quite brave, even though I was actually stupid. I wasn't being brave. Let's be clear. You should not do that if you've got no money lined up. And then and maybe that, that kind of answer your question now, because that I then basically started up a career in editing, and then, obviously then started submitting books, which I don't know if you want to talk about that side of it, but querying books, and yeah, so that's how I went from teacher to editor.
Wow, that's incredible. And
I gave you half my life story there, but it's very hard to do in just like one sentence.
well, that was boring. It was fascinating, and kudos to you two for the courage to switch careers and take these chances, and being highly educated, and kind of, but even with all that education, there's so many things you could have done, but pursuing something probably a bit more speculative and a bit more, certainly more volatile than some of the safer things you could have done. And for all its for all its issues, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who they'll maintain a job even if they don't love it, even if it's soul sucking, to maintain a paycheck. Right, but kudos to you for pursuing, your dream, what you wanted to do, right? And I can definitely see with York, like funny, York is named the university in Canada that I went to, and I did my undergrad degree was English medieval literature and modern history, and York is one of those places. When I got to Scotland for Worldcon, we were originally going to go to England, and York was high on the list because of all the history, right? That's where I really was. So I can just imagine, what I have to get back. When I have to get back to the UK and go to York and see those things. But yeah, I can just when you're telling me that going to York just inspired you, right? Yeah. That just made you want to, to be an author. Right? That's just amazing to hear. So
I get it. It's very pathetic if I go these days. I get really emotional when I go back because it has so much meaning to me. So if I ever go on my own, I go on my own quite a lot. I basically walk around in the evenings, getting really emotional, and then just kind of nipping in and out pubs and just getting more drunk and emotional. It's very pathetic, but yeah, no, it's an astonishing place, beautiful place. So, but it's funny just what you just said, about not doing like day-to-day jobs that you don't like and quitting them. I'm gonna get really cheesy now, and I'm not like hopefully not a cheesy person, but it always reminds me of a quote by Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, and he was doing a what do you call them? Graduation ceremonies where you give a big speech in front of a special. What's the word?
Convocation.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's a particular word in America, but yeah, graduation ceremony. Yeah, or
convocation.
Yeah. And he's talking about his dad, right? And he's saying how his dad wanted to be a comedian, right? He was really funny, and it's not as good as if you watch me say. You should definitely go check out the YouTube clip, because even if you don't like cheesy stuff, this will just it's he's so good. And he's talking about how his dad wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and he basically just never did anything about it, and instead he just did this job that he hated, this miserable job. I can't remember what it was, and then he was just like miserable for ages. And I think I might be combining stories with someone else, but I think he like retired from it and then like died soon after or something like that. And Jim Carrey just finishes the story, and he just says this line, which I'm probably going to mangle, but it's always stays with me, which is you can hate, you can fail at something that you absolutely hate, so you may as well try failing at something that you love. You can fail at something that you hate, so you may as well try failing at something you love. And that's, I'm not a great person in many ways, but the one positive character strength I have is that all through my life, if I don't like something, I just quit and I try something else, which sometimes is a terrible strategy if you never end up finding something good. But luckily, it's hopefully worked out now. We'll see. Actually, come back to me in a year. We'll see.
I think that's a wonderful story, and I think that's very motivating, inspiring advice from Jim Carrey. Oh, thanks, Kit, for providing the vernacular commencement speech. Yeah, and everybody calls them
That's the one.
in Canada. We tend to say convocation commencement. I guess in the U.S., I
Yeah,
guess everybody uses.
I was thinking of US, yeah, and ironically, Jim Carrey is Canadian, isn't he?
Yes, he
So
is.
he's probably doing it.
Yes, he
He's
is.
probably doing it in Canada. So you're
we
technically right, but I was thinking of commencement speech. Thank you, Kit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kit, very much, and thanks for watching and tuning in, Kit. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So and that's really interesting because when you think about and that message about trying something that you can fail at, um, rather than and that you like rather than something that you don't, you know, you talk about being an author. I suppose being an editor could potentially be one of those things as well. And that's also a big part of what you've done is being an editor. And what can you tell us about that part of your life, being an editor?
Yeah, so it was a weird journey being editor because I kind of fell into it a little bit because to pick up the story from where I finished, I needed money quickly after leaving teaching. So I kind of blagged my way onto some editing agencies where they're like the middleman, and students at universities will send them their essay and they'll send it to me to like not like cheat or anything like, but just like sort out the grammar or make it better written and stuff. There's loads of it. There's they still exist. So that's how I started it, and I kind of blagged my way blagged my way onto it. And then as my career, I guess if you want to say it, editing career kind of moved on, I sort of stopped doing academic stuff, which was okay, a bit a bit boring, whatever, and business stuff, which was really boring, like corporate documents, like editing those, and started sliding into more by luck or than anything else. Started sliding into editing books. And not just doing like copy editing or line editing or proofreading, but then also sometimes development editing as well. Um, and that is, and that that took a while. I think I've been doing this for like 11 years, whatever, being an editor. But like the first kind of 4, 5, 6 years of that was mainly occasional book, but mainly like academic and business stuff. And then in the last 5 years, I slowly transitioned to just doing what I am now, which is just full-time books. Um, and it's amazing because it never feels like work. Like I'm a massive nerd. I'm a grammar nerd. I'm a story nerd. So I'm just doing fun stuff, admittedly to a deadline, but I'm essentially just having a bit of fun. I get to just sit around, and it's not all there's not all perks of the job. The money's not great, and et cetera, et cetera. But you're not like a lawyer. If I'd been a lawyer, I'd have a lot more money. But I'm doing something I love, and it's amazing working with authors. Like every single author is just amazing, and it's so rewarding to work with them. So I've forgotten what your original question is now. What was your original question, Si? Was
No,
it about
we were talking about editing and that part of your life and how you got into
yes.
it and what it's like being an editor. And so yeah, no, so
Yeah.
you're definitely answering the question.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, a lot of people now ask me how I got into it because I sometimes get people asking me because they're looking into it as like a freelance gig. And it's hard for me to really give them good advice because I'm getting so old now that like again I got into it years ago, and the field has completely changed because of AI's made things tougher, and just technology has moved on in terms of how you get jobs and stuff. So I'm not an amazing person to give advice for how to start out anymore. But if anyone's watching thinking like, is it worth doing? Without going into a massive long rant that's take half an hour, it's incredibly rewarding. It's great, but like it's very tough to get into because it's hard to get work because there's so many like these days just everyone's doing it, frankly, and after COVID, especially when everyone realized how awesome it is to be freelance. Right, people were working from home and they were like, wow, this is a better lifestyle. And understandably, I'm very in favor of this, obviously. And so now we get way more freelance people than ever before. So it's tough to get work. Pay's not amazing. That's not attacking authors because it's just a fact. You're not like an investment banker. You're not, whatever. So it's a tough gig, frankly. It's a tough gig to get into, and it's a tough gig to get reliable work. but it's really fun, and it's allowed me. I probably wouldn't have been able to write all the novels I have over the past 10 years because I've written a lot of failed novels. Like a lot of authors, I have a lot of failed novels behind me. So I genuinely don't think I'd be at the stage now, very lucky about to have my debut published in North America. I don't think I'd be at that stage if I hadn't had this kind of cool work at home job, I guess. So yeah, I love it, even though it's tough sometimes.
That's a wonderful answer, and I think, and this is going to lead into one of the questions that the wonderful Zeros at Coup1 and Zeros at Coup1 has posted. So obviously, clearly being an editor, you have met and worked with tons of authors, especially indie authors, as you noted.
Yes.
So Zeros at Coup1 is asking you, what are some of the underrated authors you think people should read? And not just obviously authors that you've edited or worked with personally, but just in general, what are some of the authors you've read you feel are underrated that you would recommend? Or sorry, he adds and or fantasy series.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to answer his question or her question or their question. Sorry. But I'm going to give a caveat first. And I'm going to say, if you want the best answer to this question, you should come along to the event that we've just been talking about earlier, because that's one of the panels I'm actually on. And so because I tend to organize things very late, I haven't put together all my notes for answering that exact question. So the best answer to this question is going to be next Sunday in Shrewsbury, in the Nerdy Cafe, bringing it back to the event. Very good advertising. So this is just going to be off the top of my head. I'm not very good at answering off the top of my head. Okay, so I'm gonna give I'll give two trad and get two indie. How about that? That feels sensible. Underrated authors. It's hard to say if he's underrated because he's a trad author, and Harper Voyager is his publisher, no big publisher, but I don't think he gets the star treatment I think he deserves, and I don't think everyone's read him. So David Ragg. He did a duology a couple of years back called The Articles of Faith duology. It's kind of like almost like an Eastern European sort of fantasy world, a bit like Nicholas Eames, Kings of the Wild, that kind of sort of fun, interesting dialogue, kind of rogues, sort of, are they villainous, are they good? I'm not describing it very well. I'm so bad at describing books unless I planned it out in reviews. Anyway, he's just done a new trilogy, and a second one's just come out called The Company of the Wolf, and it's kind of based in the same world, but like north in the desert area. And he's just like leveled up as an author. Like the other ones are good, but this is just like, it's phenomenal. It's funny, but it'll make you cry. Dialogue's amazing. It's exactly the kind of fantasy I want to read. So David Ragg, Company of the Wolf just come out, but you have to read the first one that came out last year. Next trad, I'll try and make the next one quicker. You've got me on my favorite topic now. Trad. I was about to say my favorite there, but it's underrated. I need to keep underrated. Underrated trad. He thinks, trying to think. Oh, okay. Again, I'm not sure this counts underrated because a lot of people hype it up, and they should. But MJ Kuhn, Among Thieves duology. Yeah, you're nodding. Yeah, you know it.
I haven't read it yet. No MJ though, and she's wonderful. But yeah, I had the opportunity to meet her in person actually. Yeah, but she's awesome. Yeah. But her books I have on my TBR, high on my TBR. I just haven't gone to them yet.
Yeah. Well, if anyone doesn't know it, it's a oh god, I read the other one recently. What's it called? Thick as Thieves. So Among Thieves and Thick as Thieves. Amazing duology. It's got a similar kind of good banter vibes to David Ragg. That's obviously the style that I quite like. Sort of thieves in trouble, like kind of amoral thieves getting up to hijinks. It really kind of rich world building, especially the second one. So yeah, that's awesome. I think both those authors would understand when I say they're underrated, you know. And moving on to indie, two underrated. I mean, there's so many, and I will do a proper list for next weekend. So this is just off the top of my head. This is terrible, but underrated. Um, it's tough because in my world they're all rated because everyone's hyping them up. So it's tough to think of an underrated one. Okay, I'll tell you one. It's not a series, but an author called Tom Mock um wrote a book. Oh yeah, yeah, he's nodding again.
The Long
Um,
Nights.
The Long Nights, yeah, and I don't see. I mean, I see some hype for it, but nowhere near as much as it should get because it came out a couple of years ago, and it's like a urban fantasy, but also horror, psychological horror about vampires and noir as well. It's got noir in there, so it's like a weird genre mash, and it's essentially got the coolest idea, which is like someone's trying to find the victims of vampires by using the dead vampires like memories. So they've kind of like done a mind meld with a vampire. And it's a kind of book I like in that it has that prose. Like I'm a prose demon. I just love prose. You know, some people like, I love world building. I
Yeah.
love characters. I mean, I love those as well. But like, I need, yeah. Yeah, I hear your books of awesome prose actually. I need to get into your series. I I just love prose. So that prose is amazing. So whenever I kind of want to hype it up. Um, and
I read it. I
the
read it.
next one,
I read it. And just quickly, I didn't want to interrupt you. Just I read it. It is
no, go ahead.
fantastic, brilliant book, and I read it as part of SPFBO a few
Oh,
years
nice.
ago, and I recommended it be a semifinalist. So yeah, yeah, it's a wonderful book.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so good. And the next one, and again, I'm going to feel bad because I'm missing so many out, but we don't want to be here all day. And again, see me next Sunday. The next one I'm going to do is Jenny Hannaford. Or yeah, he's going down very well, all these. Or well, I guess I should say her author name really. It's a bit naughty. J.E. Hannaford. So she and again, I don't know if it's fair to say underrated, but like, I think I just want to hype her, I guess. She's very highly rated in the indie fantasy community. But she did a duology called The Black Hind's Wake he's got it on the shelf. Awesome. Nice. I have it too, not in this room, sadly. That came out a couple of years ago, The Skin, and I've completely forgotten the name of the second one.
The Pact.
And the
The
what?
Pact. The Pact.
Yes, the pack. Yes, thank you. And it's essentially the idea. Oh, he's going to get it. Drum roll. Let's do a little drum roll. There it is. I can't quite hear you. I think your mic's. You got so into it, your mic went.
Yeah, rookie mistake. I
Uh,
muted myself. I had to show these because they're some of the most beautiful covers in fantasy. Um,
oh, it's
that's
so
that's
nice,
the
isn't it?
skin, and that is
I
the
love that
pact.
one.
Just gorgeous. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. No.
No, I'm really glad. That's worked really well that you have those covers. Yeah, I love those covers. I've got them on my shelves as well. So that's about it's a dark fantasy, like not just epic fantasy, like dark fantasy, not grim dark, but dark. And it's essentially about a Selkie who loses her skin at the start of the book. And I don't want to say any more to give it away, but essentially it's a world that's like mainly underwater, and there's human settlements are kind of on these islands, and it's like in a future kind of thing, and there's sea monsters, and the idea that there used to be sea monster magic, but now the world's kind of losing the magic. And she just kind of does a whole spin on sea monsters and found family, and it's dark and it's just really good. I absolutely love it. And she's also done I mean, I really love that geology, so I'd say start on that geology. But she's also done an awesome epic fantasy series, which is ongoing, 2 books in, called the. You've probably got them on your shelves as well. Those are some good bookshelves. I forgot what the Orlevian Gates is. That's what the series called?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Gates of Hope is the first one. Gates of Sorrow is the one that I arc read recently, and it's out now. I think the third one's coming out soon, and that's more kind of old school, but with modern epic fantasy. So it's got like a great take on dragons, like emotion dragons, and it's got moonhounds, which are like dogs that are like telepathically connected to the owner, and it's just awesome. So J. Hannaford, under like it's critically acclaimed, and yet I would say underrated as well, I think. And I could go on all day, but I'll leave it there. And if you want more, come next Sunday.
Well, I told those are authors that I know and respect, and Jay Henford is one of my favorite authors and people in the space. I've interviewed her in the past on Six Elementals interviews. Actually, she was my first interview for Six
Oh,
Elementals.
cool.
Interviewed her for Page Two, and had the extreme privilege of meeting her in person in at Worldcon in Glasgow. That
Oh,
was
so did I.
one of my highlights. She's just wonderful. She's
Yeah, I
just
was I, I
someone.
was
Yeah,
standing. Sorry to interrupt. I was standing in the bar in Worldcon, and I just turned to my left, and literally standing next to me,
yeah.
it was because she wears these awesome like dragon
The
scales,
glamour.
those creative
Yeah,
ones. Yeah, and so for a second I was like, "Who is that?" And then it kind of twigged, and I was like, "Jenny." So yeah, that was a really nice moment. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I
She
interrupted you.
No, not at all. She is phenomenal. She's a brilliant author and a marvelous person, and I highly recommend you go and read her books. I was able to. I read her most recent one, which is more cozy fantasy, Unfamiliared. It's a cute little
Oh,
novella. It's really good. I had the honor of her gifting it to me in Glasgow, and yeah, she is just wonderful. I have reviews up of her books. On Goodreads, so check them out. And if you've done any, I'm sure you've done some as well. And so check out anything that Ed's written on her books in terms of reviews. And yeah, she's just someone who deserves the hype. She is amazing. So
yes. 100%. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I'm glad we shared basically all those books. That was cool. That was good.
yeah, no, that is awesome. Um, and you know, as an editor,
Yes.
editing is a tough job. Authors need someone who can be honest with them and positive and encouraging and motivating, yet helping to, if they're, and being able to guide and steer in a certain direction, and also step back when the author says, no, I want to stick with this aspect, and ultimately it's the author's decision, right? The author has
Yeah.
control, especially in indie, ultimately control over what they want to put out there. So, how do you find what is the toughest part of being an editor in terms of working with an author? Is it that relationship, that push and pull? Like, hey, I think we need to fix this, and maybe the author's a bit resistant, and then maybe convincing them, okay, well, I think if we do this, it will really be better. Like, what are the challenges to being an editor?
So I'm not sure how good an answer this is, but it's an honest one, which is often the most important. Um, on the actual editing the book side and working with the author, for me there are no challenges, and I'll explain that. What I mean is like fingers crossed, but I've not yet worked with a difficult author who's kind of pushed back. The general the general vibe you get when you're working with an author is that you are, like you say, you are respectful. It's their call. You're just here to offer changes. They can listen to you or they can completely ignore you. And once you've been an editor for a few years, you learn how to give feedback that is honest but constructive, respectful, also encouraging. So you have to it's good to point out things that are going really well, things that are going as that can be worked on. So in that respect, I never have any problems with the authors. Everyone just gets it. It's just a really nice relationship. And whether or not that's just my experience or whether or not authors tend to be really cool people, I suspect a bit of both. In terms of the actual like doing it, again, it's not I won't say it's easy because you have to focus and concentrate all the time. Editing is just about concentration. So you have to be good at that and not easily distracted. But in terms of the actual like worrying about how it's going to be taken or just kind of any difficulties, there aren't any really. It's just nice. Occasionally you get like a tough book where um, well, so there's three different kinds of editing I do, right? So I do development editing, I do line editing, and I do proofreading. And if you're thinking, where does copy editing come into that? I don't use that term because that's more accurate to traditional publishing, where you get your main editor who development edits you, and he also line edit you a bit, and then you get the copy editor who do a little bit of line editing, but mostly like proofreading and checking consistency, and then you also get a proofreader. So I don't use my term because I offer developmental editing, which is story, line editing, which is advisory comments to make the sentences better, essentially, like word choice and sentence flow and stuff. And then I do the proofreading bit, which is a little more like the copy editing bit, where I kind of I correct it myself with all the grammar and stuff. So the line editing, the proofreading parts, or if you want to put it together and call it copy editing, um, just fine for me. It's just like I'm a natural geek. It's never difficult. Development editing, sometimes you get a tough book that's like, oh man, I need to think about the structure of this book, and that can be the toughest part of the book, of the job mentally, because you're like, this book needs a bit of restructuring. I gotta write some diagrams. I gotta do some stuff here. So sci-fi books tend to be quite hard in that respect. Um, and but the honest answer is that there aren't really many of the challenges that you say, possibly because I'm quite advanced in my career. So you kind of learn what you're doing. That all the tough bits, and I alluded to this before, all the tough bits have nothing to do with the authors, nothing to do with the work. It's just like trying to make money and trying to get jobs. The capitalist economy, that's a tough bit.
No, I hear you, which is probably the issue for most people, out there working today is just,
Yeah.
the financial aspect, and the remuneration. Like, that's big. That's a big part of, you know, uh, whatever we're doing. And as a writer, of course, right?
Yeah.
That's
Well, I mean, the tough thing is that, like, you can't charge too much, because you want to be fair to the authors, especially indie authors. They've got so many costs going on. Well, I don't need to tell you, you know all about it. And so there's a limit to how much you can charge, but at the same time, you got to be paid fairly for your time. You got to pay your bills, right? So sometimes that costs you work. Sometimes there are editors out there who I think are part-time, so they maybe don't need to make as much money as I do a month, because well, maybe they're with a partner, so they kind of so that some editors charge a lot less than me. Some editors charge way more than me. I think I'm quite competitively priced, but I would say that. But some just kind of charge. I'm like, I could never charge that, because I couldn't. I need to pay my bills. So part of the job is kind of like judging the right amount to charge, and then working out, are you being unfair to the author? Are you being fair to yourself? So that bit is like any freelance gig. That's thinking about the money. What's the best price point? I'm not naturally good at that, because I'm a sort of geek story man. So yeah, freelance gigs are basically like the price you pay for sitting around in your pajamas or your underpants, whatever. The price you pay is a very sort of, you got to plan your economic situation very well.
well said. Well said. Very witty and well said. Um, so now, I mean, you've, and it's been fascinating to hear all these different careers you've had and continue to have. So in all of that, you become an author. So, and despite the fact that it sounds like you're certainly very much in touch and in tune with the indie scene, you end up getting a traditionally book deal, getting agent, getting a book deal, and now you're being traditionally published as opposed to indie, where you spend a lot of time editing, etc. So how did that all come together?
Yes. So you mean, like, how did I get my book deal, essentially?
Yeah, how did you get an agent? How did you get a book deal? And was there a time where you thought that indie you were going to publish, like, maybe potentially exclusively indie? Was it always traditional? Was that always the goal? What how did that all
So
come about?
I was basically, I about 4 years ago, I essentially knew nothing. What I mean by that is I wasn't on social media. Well, I had like an Instagram account with just some friends, like whatever, like school friends, whatever. And I had a Facebook account I stopped using like 10 years ago because I hate Facebook. I wasn't on Twitter, I wasn't on any others. And so on the indie side, I knew nothing about indie books. I didn't even know it was a proper thing, right? And it was only when I joined Twitter that I discovered, I became this kind of convert to the amazing, and the last 3 years have just been this journey of discovery. So indie was never an option for me because I was just ignorant. I just didn't know that that was a growing thing, like some authors in the indie community, they talk about this kind of like 10-year journey when indie kind of has gone on this amazing journey. I just wasn't aware of all this. I was late. I discovered all this like 3 years ago, and that feels crazy because I spent half my life online, just like in chatting to, reading, hyping up, interviewing indie authors, but like I just didn't know anything. And that also is applicable to my trad experience because I wasn't online. I didn't know how to query properly. I didn't know that you had to like in trad. It often helps to like network with people. They want to see what you're about online and stuff. I just didn't know all this, so I started as soon as I left teaching to go back to my original story. I wrote my first book, and it was the first in a 5-book series, and I was very confident and I was very cocky. I was like, I'm going to be a big fancy author. We all know where the story goes. And I wasn't online. Well, I searched for tips on how to write a query letter. I wasn't completely stupid, but I wasn't I wasn't communicating with like a Discord or cool people on DMs on Twitter, whatever. I was just ignorant. So I wrote this book. I sent it off. It got 49 rejections from agents and 1 request for a full, who then ghosted me. And I was just in that way you are when you don't know anything. I was just shattered. I was like, my confidence was shattered. It was tough, man. Because this was also the time when I was trying to make money in editing, and it was the start of my editing career. And I was like, I'm just a loser. um, and then eventually I was like, okay, let's start again. Let's write another series. So I wrote another series, pretty much same world, pretty much same characters. You'll see a theme here, and same thing happened, and almost exactly the same thing. And then for my third series, I also wrote a sequel to the second one. So by this time, I've written 3 or 4 books. And for my third series, I took the same characters, and I took the same world. I was like, I'm not giving up on these themes and concepts. So a lot of my characters in the one that's going to be published were in my first series 10 years ago. I'm very stubborn, but I thought I need a little bit of help. I need a little bit of networking help because like I don't know what I'm doing. I should have just gone on Twitter. I still didn't realize that's what you had to do to make friends. So I paid some money to go on a course called the Curtis Brown Creative Writing Course. I might have mangled that name up, which is like there's an agency called Curtis Brown in the UK, and they offer this course and everything. Now, I was a little bit of a, I shouldn't say this publicly, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was a little bit of a sneak because the whole point of this course was to teach you how to write your novel, finish your novel. I'd done my novel. It was pretty much done. I was like, I need that extra thing to put in my query letter. That sounds really terrible, but you got to understand, I'd had like 8 years of just, not 8 years, like by this point, 6 or 7 years of just kind of like, no, not even that, 5, whatever, of just feeling like a complete loser, right? And I was just like, am I ever going to achieve my dream? What is happening? So I did it, and it was, it was great. I met a lot of friends there who I still have. It was really good. And to sound less cynical, I did actually then rewrite my book a lot because of it. So what I didn't just abuse it. I did actually take it seriously when I actually went on it. And ironically, I have no idea if it actually helped because I know a lot of people have understandable criticisms about courses like that, paying money to kind of and I'll never know if it helped unless I ask my agent. Because when I finished a course, I went on sub with my third series. 2 weeks later, an agent called Harry Illingworth, who's a very tall guy, very cool guy, said, "I love your book. I want to be your agent." And that was it. And I don't know if it helped that I got on that course. I think knowing Harry, I think he just liked the book, so I don't know if it actually helped that much. I think I just made friends because of that course, basically. But I don't want to do it down because it was very nice to me. And that's when I went on Twitter, and that's when I discovered all the stuff that I could have been doing in the last 10 years. And I was like, oh man, if I'd known some of this stuff, okay, I could have been doing this instead. And then that began my journey to make friends and review books and discover the indie world. While I wasn't allowed to talk about my book for 2 years. So, yeah. So there you go.
Wow, that is amazing. But again, congratulations. I mean, you won the lottery several times. You got an agent, and your agent got you a book deal, and you're going to be published author. So that's a big deal. So congratulations and kudos to you on that.
Thank you. That's the kind of yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it goes down.
Well, now let's talk a bit about the book, about Lightfall, about it, what you can tell us. I know it's
Yes.
coming out. What you can tell us, contractually and otherwise, about what it's about.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point I can tell you anything you want to know. Although, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very bad at talking about my book. So, if you want to know what my book's about, you should read reviews about it because they're much better at talking about it than me. So, it's an epic fantasy trilogy. Book one is coming out this January the 14th, in North America, US and Canada, and with St. Martin's Press. And they're like a Macmillan imprint, and it is first of a trilogy. As I said, it's not coming out in the UK, although if you have Amazon Prime, you can just order it if you're in the UK, and you won't pay any charges, and you just have to wait an extra week. So, so I only say that so everyone watching who's in the UK just doesn't go, oh, forget that then. And what's it about? That's the important thing. It's an epic fantasy trilogy, but with vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. The concept is there's no mortals, no humans. Everyone's immortal. No humans at all. So that's the tagline essentially. It's got murder mystery in. It's got conspiracy. It's got a little bit of a sci-fi element that I shouldn't really say, but that's a bit naughty. But if you read the whole of it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's got stupid, sarcastic banter, which I've copied from all my favorite authors like Terry Pratchett, David Ragg, and people. Yeah, the actual plot is it's one of those sort of complicated plots that if I had my time again, I'd write a simpler plot just so I could talk about it in interviews because it's really annoying to talk about. But essentially, I'll give you the brief version. It takes place in the last vampire city called First Light, and it's a bit of a rubbish city in that the rich drink the best blood that makes you powerful, makes you strong, stops you aging, and the working class or the poor vampires, they drink the worst blood that makes you weak, that after a couple of centuries you'll get wrinkles, you'll age and you'll die like us. And it's a very divided society. And one of my main characters at the start of the book, she discovers the only clue to the murder of the ruler's son, who's been murdered outside the city walls. And she uses this as an opportunity to try and blackmail her way into a better status in society. And along the way, she teams up with a spy, a countess, a couple of detective sorcerers, and a werewolf assassin, and they all come together to solve this murder. And in the process, discover a much bigger conspiracy that gets to the heart of this very rotten city. So that was okay actually. Yeah, I need to write that down when I watch the recording back. That wasn't too bad.
Wow, that sounds incredible. That sounds fantastic.
Cheers, man.
Wow. Wow. So, what were the inspirations for this book?
Oh, that's a good question. So one of the inspirations was my hero, one of my writing heroes, one of the main heroes is Terry Pratchett. The Discworld book specifically. I bet you're going to say you got them all on your shelves. And that was kind of what really got me into. Well, I read Lord of the Rings when I was really young, and then through my teenage years, I read the Discworld books, and then because I'm old, I carried on reading them because they were still coming out at that time. And there's a Discworld book. I mean, my book's not quite as overtly comedic as Discworld, although the later Discworld books get quite serious. I would say they're literature, like proper literature, but that's a rant for another day. One of the later Discworld books is called The Fifth Elephant, and in The Fifth Elephant, one of the characters called Vimes, he goes to a part of the world where there's vampires and werewolves, but like not in like there's a bit of horror in it, but more in a kind of like a political way. So they're just actual vampire werewolf societies, but it's in a fantasy world, obviously Discworld. And I read that book and I was like, that is such a cool idea. The idea of a fantasy world, but you take horror elements and then you try and treat them seriously, right? And you know, it's been done a bit. It's not like no one ever does it, but like you tend to get just vampires and werewolves tend to be horror or romance or something. And ever since I read that, I was like, I've always loved horror. I should say I review horror as well. I originally started writing horror short stories before I ever thought about writing a fantasy book. Always loved horror. So the idea of combining my two great loves, horror and fantasy, together, and then treating vampires and werewolves seriously. Or they have sorcerers as well in my book. Was just ever since I read The Fifth Elephant, I was like, "Whoa, that's an awesome idea." So that was my direct influence for the series. I'm just copying Terry Pratchett. In terms of, and I guess in terms of another influence, it's kind of like dark fantasy, and I have a lot of authors I love that do that kind of sort of, it's not quite grimdark, but I love, people like Joe Abercrombie and Mark Lawrence, all those kind of authors. And that I read before I ever knew indie was around, a few years ago. They kind of made me want to sort of write a proper kind of epic fantasy thing that's a little bit dark and stuff. So I kind of wanted to combine that with the idea of what Terry Pratchett did with vampires and werewolves and just kind of like put it into one thing. So yeah, I guess those are my two kind of influences. A thousand more fantasy influences because I've read fantasy and sci-fi all my life and horror. So yeah, but those are the two main ones. Based, I wanted to take vampires and werewolves politically seriously.
As much as they can be taken politically seriously, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah. You have to a huge grain of salt in my books. Yeah. Well, I mean, the other idea, just quickly, is the idea of a series where everyone's immortal, right? Because I've been thinking about that for years. Because obviously they can be killed, like they're not like invulnerable. It's very important. They're not invulnerable. They're immortal. Although it's quite hard to kill them. And that changes everything. Because
Yes.
imagine if you've been living for like 500 years and like your wife died 500 years ago. Like, are you just still like, how does that grief work? What if you're married for like 300 years? Do you end up being really sick of your partner? Like, um, politically, like, if you can remember previous wars, does that make it harder to make peace in the future because you've still got all those old grudges? I'm not sure I examined all those that well in the first book. The first book's more about kind of getting the characters down, but I've just written a second book, and editor's about to come back to me on that, and I've focused a lot more on that, and that's kind of something I really want to sort of focus on in the third book as well. So that idea of immortality just fascinates me, absolutely fascinates me.
Wow. Yeah, it absolutely sounds incredible. Like I can't wait to read this. This is definitely going on my TBR, and this is something that I'm sure I'm gonna love. So, I can't wait.
Cheers, man.
I can't wait to read it. So you've got the first one's coming out. It's a trilogy. You're working on the second one is pretty well done. You're saying is that the deal?
Yeah, so I'm in the kind of editing stages with my editor now. Hoping he's not. He's read a bit of it and he seems happy. He doesn't need massive changes, but we'll see. Hopefully it will come out the year after, but it depends how many changes. Sometimes with these series, there might be a 2 year gap, but hopefully it'll come out the year after. And so around Christmas time, maybe, or January, February, or maybe later, given publishing timetables, I'll start writing the third book. And then later that year, I'll start planning a new series. So, so that's really exciting because I've got a few ideas, and that's a real fun part where you just like you haven't written anything, you're just coming up with ideas. That's the crazy part. But I don't know if it's going to be successful. That's the crazy part. It could be like people could like it, people could hate it. It could be a flop, it could be a hit. So it's hard to like think about what's going to happen next when you're just a debut who has no idea what's happening. You're just a bit of an idiot. So it's just
But
yeah.
you got that advance, and I was going to ask you how it feels to get that, that whether it's partial split payments, etc., to get that first bit of money to know that, hey, I'm getting paid now as an author. Someone's paying me to be an author. Like when you get that first, you see that first check. How does it feel?
It's very odd. It's very odd. I had this conversation recently actually, about what it's like to actually be paid for your writing with a friend, and it's kind of like a game changer, basically, because before someone ever pays you for your writing, you're basically just someone who is just doing this thing for fun because you like it, right? And maybe you want to try and see if you can be paid for in the future. But essentially, you're just an idiot, just kind of having a laugh, just kind of doing what you love. Idiot in a good way. And then as soon as you get paid for it, two things happen. One, a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that you feel amazing. You feel like your life choices are validated. You feel like maybe you're not terrible at this. Your self-esteem goes up a bit. You get a bit more confident. You start thinking of a potential future where people might even want to buy your books. Lots of awesome things start happening, and it's nice. It's really wholesome. You feel really good. The second thing that happens is that you are suddenly under pressure. Because now you're not just having a bit of a laugh. Now especially when you sign a 3-book deal like me, you're not just having a laugh. You're contractually obligated to write, and if you don't write, you'll be in breach of contract, and then all your dreams that you've been planning for the last 10 years will just crumble like so much. Like I don't know, something that crumbles. um, I promise I'm a writer. So maybe that's a bit too honest, but like for me, it's kind of like it's like you lose the innocence of just doing it for fun, but you gain a certain kind of sense of validity. Like someone thinks that people might actually want to read your stuff, which is really cool because at the end of the day, it's very cool if you just write a book and you give it to 10 friends and your friends love it and you have fun. That's awesome. I mean, most people never finish their books, right? I think some crazy stat like 90% of people never actually finish a book they start. So if you write a book, some friends love it, you're awesome. You're having a great life. But I think there is something to be said for the fact that if lots of people read your book, something happens. And what happens is that your world gets talked about, it gets thought about, it gets expanded in people's minds. People come up with crazy interpretations you never heard of before that are really cool. So as soon as you get paid, you get that opportunity to take it to the next level. Unfortunately, that's absolutely terrifying. But it's nice as well.
That is awesome. All of the emotions and all the different the angst and the expectations and but at the end of the day, you've made it. You're you have the chance to be successful. So again, kudos to you and obviously wishing you nothing but the best and great success,
Oh,
which
thank you for
I'm
that, man.
sure that you will enjoy. There's a question here from Kit. Once again, Kit, thanks so much for joining us today. And Kit asks you, Ed, was there any difficulty getting a publishing contract for a trilogy? I heard publishers prefer standalones with quote unquote series potential.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's really getting into the nitty gritty of publishing. So so this series that I'm is going to be a trilogy. I originally was going to be 5 books. I never gave up on that idea of publishing 5 books. Every single series, I was like, it's going to be 5 books. And my agent was like, no. The debut authors will not get signed for 5 books. It just doesn't happen anymore. Maybe back in the day, in 2 decades ago, in a completely different time. But these days, fantasy publishers are much more risk averse in terms of trusting debuts, and that's partly because they've been burnt by some authors. We won't talk about that, but it's also just because of the way that publishing has kind of moved into some different kind of areas. So he was like, "What we'll do, we'll make it a trilogy, right? I think I can sell a trilogy." Now, what you have to remember is that I got my deal 3 years ago now. I signed my deal, not 3 years ago, sorry, 2.5 years ago. Now, at that time, it was swinging towards standalones of series potential, which Kit is talking about. But I think there was still a bit of a market for buying trilogies, right? These days, it has, in the last couple of years, it has swung even more to saying standalones of series potential. So well, his question was there any difficulty getting a publishing contract for a trilogy? Not really, because all the difficulties I faced, like I still haven't got UK deal, weren't to do with the fact it's a trilogy. It was to do with the fact of various other things. Um, and it sold in America, and that there wasn't any like, oh, should we buy it because it's a trilogy. It was like the editor was like really keen to just get it. So if you've got a great agent and you've got a great idea, it is still possible to sign for a trilogy. However, especially in the last 2 years, it's really swung towards duologies or standalones of series potential. I would actually say that duologies are kind of just as much in trend as standalones of series potential. Because if you've got a good agent and you've got a good idea, publishers are like really keen on duologies, because like, okay, even if the first one isn't that successful, it's only one more that they're going to make a loss on, right? So if you want to be like, I don't want it just to be one book, I need it to be two books. Duologies are still like massive at the moment. Um, but yeah, standalones of series potential is obviously the thing that a lot of people are doing now. It just depends on how much risk you want to take, right? Traditional publishing is all about risk. It's all about gambling. It's all about risk. And if you are convinced that you have an idea and it has to be a trilogy, and your agent is good and you think your idea is good, like stick with that, man. And if it doesn't work, then okay, you've got to go back to the drawing board. And if you're like, it doesn't work and I don't want to give up on the idea of a trilogy, well, indie publishing is massive these days, and you've got amazing authors doing 5-book series. Some are doing 7 books. I think yours is yours going to be 5 books or something.
7. 7.
7. Okay, you know exactly what I'm talking about then. Yeah. So I would say don't sacrifice what you want to do too much just to get a book deal, because that's not the path to happiness. But if you think you can be a little bit flexible in your series and you think you can maybe make something work, then by all means try standalones of series potential. I don't know if that's a long ramble. I don't know if I've answered that question, but I didn't have much difficulty. But these days, I think there's a lot more difficulty with trilogies. So yeah, I guess to answer the question. The other thing I should say as well is that trilogies are there's a lot more risk, not just in getting the deal in the first place, but also in trying to make a career once you've got your deal. Because without going into too much detail in publishing, if your first book doesn't sell that well and your publisher gives up on it, that's a bit too much honesty there, but that's what happens a lot. Publishers just give up on books that don't sell, and they go, we're going to focus on some other cool new debuts, and your second book and your third book won't get any marketing, won't get any attention. So you're taking a gamble that your first book's going to do all right. Whereas if you have a standalone or a duology, it's like, okay, this didn't work, but in like a year's time, I can focus on something else. So you are taking a gamble, not just on getting a deal, but you're taking a gamble on what happens if maybe the publisher doesn't market it in the first place and it's a bit of a flop, and then you're stuck in a contract with a series that isn't going very well. I know writers that had that happen to them. It's not a very pleasant experience. It might happen to me. So yeah, so there's risk on both sides, but ultimately, I would say don't sacrifice your ideals too much, because you can always go the indie route, and boy, are there some successful authors doing the indie route at the moment.
Well, I think that's a fantastic answer. It seems like Kit is very grateful for that. And fantastic question, Kit. Thank you so much. Kit says thank you. Kit. Very informative. Did not know duologies were popular. Yeah, and quickly,
very popular.
And I want to put up the wonderful Timothy Wolf. Speaking of fantastic indie authors, Timothy Wolf, shout out. Thank you so much. He's always so supportive and tunes in when he can. I know he's very busy himself. Hello, happy Saturday. Timothy Wolf says, check out his stuff. He is a fabulous indie author himself, Timothy.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. Listen, you've been so generous with your time, Ed. This has been fantastic. It's been such an honor and pleasure to talk to you. I want to respect your time, though, as it gets later there in your evening. Before we sign off, can you tell us where to find you and social media? Just confirm when your book's coming out. Where to buy it, because the release is somewhat split there, and anything else you'd like to say, in terms of wrapping up comments.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of my book, I'll finish off with the event again. Uh, in terms of my book, well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter mainly. I spend a lot of time on Instagram and Twitter, but I'm also technically on Threads and TikTok. I'm trying to do more on TikTok, but I don't know. I'm maybe too old for that now. But you can basically find me everywhere. But mainly Twitter and Instagram. As Ed Crocker Books. So it's my name and then books. That's I used to be like have loads of different names, and then I just changed it all to Ed Crocker Books, and it's so much easier. You can find my website www.ed-crocker.com. In the next 2 weeks, I'm doing a proper update of that because at the moment it's terrible. There's nothing much on it. I will also be doing a newsletter, which I'm going to do loads of good stuff for the newsletter. I'm going to try and take that seriously. So come back to my website in a couple of weeks, and there'll be a chance for a newsletter, which is where you're going to get all the good stuff, terrible stuff, and my actual book comes out in January the 14th in North America. But thank you. But like I say, you can get it in UK through Amazon Prime, and probably other sources. You can pre-order it on like Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all the usual American places. You can add it to Goodreads. That always helps. You can always contact me on social media. I'm fairly friendly, a bit weird, but fairly friendly. I think that covers me. I should probably show it. Actually, I've got an arc here. Hello. Can you actually see that? Probably not because my stupid background. You guys, never mind. My background's my cover anyway, so it's reversed. As for the event, I should finish on the event. It's just a reminder. It's next week on Sunday, so week tomorrow. 29th September. I think it's 11 till 7. Holly might kill me. That's wrong. It's at the Nerdy Cafe in Shrewsbury. Tickets are only £2.50 unless they've changed, which is just crazy. Like, what a bargain. And if you want any more info, there's a website, and I just don't have the website name to hand. But maybe you do. I don't know. But you should come. It's going to be really fun. So, yeah. I think that's everything.
That is incredible. And yeah, all the links below, including the SFF Spotlight 24, are in the links to this video in the description, and Ed's Linktree, etc., are in the video description. So if you want to find out more, and obviously check out Lifeall when it comes out and Ed's future books, and check him out on Fan-Fi Addict and his reviews, etc.
I should say for my Fan-Fi Addict family, www.fanfiaddict.com. Obviously follow Fan-Fi Addict on Twitter. So many amazing reviewers. There's Horror and SFF. I do interviews, reviews. There's so many other great guys. So yeah, check that out. fanfiaddict.com. So thanks for reminding me. Oh, if you want me to edit your book, hit me up on my website. You can contact me, or hit me up on Twitter. I'll edit your book.
There you go. One-stop shopping with Ed Crocker.
I do everything media. Do everything mediocre, nothing well. That's.
Well, listen, this has been fascinating. It's been awesome getting to know you better, Ed. This has been a real treat. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very honored to have you. All the best of luck with the SFF Spotlight 24 event. Best of luck with your new debut release, Lifeall. Best of luck with your editing and everything you do with Fan-Fi Addict. And it's just been wonderful to chat to you. So I'm looking forward to reading your book. And I hope you do me the honor in the future of coming back again on the channel and chatting some more.
I'd love to come on. You're such a good interviewer. It's been so much fun. I've never talked so deeply about my life, really. So yeah, it's been so much fun. I'd love to come back on. Thank you.
That would be awesome. I'm going to hold you to it. Just remember that. So
yes, hold me to it. Yeah, pinky promise.
Everyone who's been in the chat, such as Kit, such as Zero Zaku 1, Timothy Wolf, thank you so much for coming by, and joining and asking these great questions and commenting. You are what makes this sort of long form content wonderful. And of course, we had a wonderful guest, so that also makes it easier with having Ed here. So, but this is the second live we're doing. Today is one more tonight with the incredible Jenny Words at 7 p.m. So if you're free, 7 p.m. Eastern, turn into that. Jenny is spectacular, an iconic author. So, but we just had a fabulous author with us just now, Ed, and we can't wait to see where he takes his writing career in the future. So, Once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time. Take care.